Right here on the program, we get to bring various topical issues on the table just to try and dissect them and make sense out of them. Tonight on the program, we are putting on the table matters governance and, of course, an analysis show like no other. I'll be introducing my panelists in just a while, but I want to let you know that this show is interactive. All you need to do is tweet us and add the hashtag InFocusRW. When you add that particular hashtag, it makes it easier for me to simply just follow that particular hashtag, and we'll be able to sample some of your tweets right here in the course of the program. So do tweet us and be able to add the hashtag InFocusRW. And of course, in the course of the program, we'll be able to sample them like this one here already coming through. Edward Kadozi says, development comes with increasing public demands and expectations. Apparently, the preparedness of local government lags behind with these increasing development and expectations. Local government needs to be capacitated to be able to meet the public service delivery. Of course, this is one of the items we're talking about tonight on the program, so do tweet us and add the hashtag InFocusRW. That is the only hashtag we're actually following tonight. You don't have to mention me in your tweets or any other person, just add hashtag InFocusRW and we'll be able to follow your tweets in the course of the program. Let me bring on board our panelists on the program. We have Dr. Frank Habineza, the Democratic Green Party of Rwanda. Thank you for joining us on the program.
It's a pleasure.
Always a pleasure having you on the show. Also with us is Dr. Lonzen Ruggira, coming back on the show. Earlier before we went on air, you guys were talking about how he is a bad omen, and actually he predicted in a way that made it difficult for the Green Party to actually carry the day. We'll talk about that in the course of the show. Okay. Dr. Lonzen Karibu on the program.
He thinks I'm the reason he lost.
He says that.
Yeah, it caused bad omen.
He gave you bad luck. We'll be able to talk about that right on the program. And of course, also with us is Dr. Usta Kaitesi, the Deputy Director General of the Rwanda Governance Board. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you,
I
John.
sit here knowing that anytime you might actually take over this show. From your prowess.
If you please.
If I please, from your prowess of moderating panels, I've watched you and you do an amazing job. Thank you for joining us on the program.
Thank you.
Right, so we have, let's say, like 3 or 4 items on the agenda to talk about tonight on the program. Of course, all of them anchored on, public governance. And one of the things that I want us to look at, first of all, we cannot run away from it. We've had conversation around this, but we will not dwell on it too much, but it is the issue of the deaths that have been coming up from the disasters we've been seeing. The rains, heavy rains, year in, year out. We keep seeing some of these things happening. But I want us to hear from a governance perspective. Dr. Frank, as a person coming from the Greens, some people are concerned that they have not even had any statement, any public call on these matters of environment, that is causing these heavy rains and the floods. Why?
Yeah, it's not by accident.
Why?
Because we have already put that in our manifesto, and we talked so much about it so many times.
Until you gave up, like we don't want to talk about it this time.
No, because we have outlined things which we thought if the government could have done them, things would have been better. We've talked much about Nyabugogo. We've talked much about floodings. We've talked much about land slidings. We've talked a lot about them, and we have published so many things about them. So now we said, let's first see everything we have said, everything we have advised the government. Let's see what they're going to do. What are they doing about this?
So now you're proving them right that we told you and you did not do it, and so you're just sitting back.
Yeah, so now we wanted to first, because sometimes we may think that the people we tell are not hearing. Maybe they are hearing. So there are a lot of actions that are taking place, but there are some things where we are very concerned that it looks like the Ministry of Disaster Preparedness always acts at the last hour, at the 11th hour. So we know from January to December, we know very well the months where we have much rains. We know they have already highlighted places which are high-risk zones in the country, those houses near the hills or near and actually they have even put on some marks, tower, like they should remove, but they don't remove them. Why? Maybe there's not enough budget for that to settling people to other places. So we think now things should move away from plans to actions.
Plans to action.
Yeah.
Let's hear Dr. Lonzen. I mean, your take on this. I mean, he says they've spoken about this many times, and nothing maybe has not been done, or something has been done out of that talk. but they want to move from plans to action. This is what he says.
Well, the part of what Dr. Habineza is saying is reasonable, and he's correct. The other part is wrong.
Which part is he correct? Which part is he wrong?
Where he's correct is about, there are two aspects about disaster. And there's the natural aspect where you have very little to do about, and there's the governance aspect where you have mitigation mechanisms to intervene. Now, when we talk about the governance aspect, and that's where he's talking about the mobilization and the ability to predict these natural disasters and to put in place mechanisms to respond, then the problem that I have with his intervention is that he shifts responsibility elsewhere. And him as a leader in this country, Green Party, with a platform that should be square and center in providing the leadership around this, the idea that he wants to shift this responsibility to government, even though government should be responsible. But in his position, in his capacity, we expect something. So Dr. Habineza needs to come out of his manifesto and, like he said, go on the ground and be in the areas where the natural disasters are taking place. Be with the people. He needs the votes, and the elections are coming up, and he's not there. And he's talking about not being in touch with the reality on the ground, and he's not. And that's the part that I have problems with him. But the rest of it is rather correct.
Let's hear first from Dr. Usta. I mean, it's only fair that we all have a round, and then we'll come back around too. Dr. Usta, Dr. Habineza feels that on the governance part, there's been a failure, in actually mitigating this disasters out of the rains that we see annually, year in, year out. We seem to be acting rather than preventing. Yet we know that these seasons come and go every year, year in, year out.
Well, I think the nature of the disaster themselves determine the character of preparedness. The extent that it goes sometimes is what makes it a disaster, naturally. So I would say that there is preparedness, but also climate change is for real. We will do a lot of things. We are trying to mitigate climate change as a nation and as a globe, but in reality, things turn around very differently. So I should mention that we have been on the field for quite a while. We are now doing the CRC, which takes us a lot in the village. And we found villages where people have been vacated. So there is a perspective of how much we have had that have been affected directly by the disaster, but we do not necessarily, we are not yet able to report how much we have protected and how much we have saved. So I think I would definitely say that we need to be proactive, much more proactive. The extent of the disaster is very unpredictable, and that's what makes it a disaster. But I think I would like to agree that dealing with the disaster is not a manifesto thing.
Right.
Dealing with the disaster is an emergency thing and is a humanitarian thing.
That concerns everybody.
I would like really to say, while the government is doing whatsoever it's doing, it's every citizen's responsibility to indeed save lives and be the guardians of one another when disaster breaks.
Right. Dr. Habineza, I mean, Lonzen also says it, that you are actually missing out on opportunities where you could have actually been able to reach out to the people, but you are holed up, like Dr. Usta says, in your manifesto.
Well, that's not correct. What we are trying to say is that, well, I agree that it's everyone's responsibility to help when you can, wherever we can. But we have a government in charge, which has even budget, which has even a ministry, which has money. And there are other institutions surrounding the ministry which could as well help, like the National Police, like the Army, there are other institutions in place which could help when we have disasters. So I think the first problem we have at the moment is that there have been a lot of plans, a lot of talk, but with less action. So let's do a proper preparedness plan and make sure that whatever we have said, like those people who are living in, they call them in Chinyarwanda, Amanegeka, in those high-risk zones, let let the government find new homes for them or new places for them. Let there be a budget, and we solve that at least for once. Then we deal with catastrophes where we cannot manage. But there are things here we can manage. There are people who are being washed away by these floods, by these rains, where we could have done something. Look at the roads. Here is a road in Gachenje, whereby people, those who are constructing, they didn't even put some trenches where water could pass. So basically, you construct a road, you don't put up any trench, and you remove all this soil, you put it actually on people's houses, and that soil is the one which takes away people's houses and their lives. So basically, you wonder where are these people who are in charge of controlling all this? There is something government has to do before we come to help, because you come to help, but we are not stronger than the government. The government, it is responsibility to protect lives, to protect people. This is the main responsibility of the government. So basically, whoever wants to come, you can come, but to help. But first, let the government do what's supposed to do, and then other people can join in. We have Red Cross who can join in. Everybody can join in. But has government done its part?
So before it does its part, then the rest cannot do anything?
No, we can, but we are not stronger than it. Like, even in my neighborhood here in Kigali, we saw rains coming, washing away even some parts of the roads. And so basically, there's been some poor planning, infrastructure planning. There's a problem.
Right. Dr. Lonzan.
Now, Dr. Habineza is talking about, is mixing many things that I think should be separated. Even though I have a problem with him not taking responsibility, because in politics, if you want to win access power, you have to take leadership in certain areas that you are passionate towards. And the Greens are passionate towards the environment. And if they're absent in that leadership, then where else are they going to get their votes? Now, the issues that he is conflating, and I think it is a bit disingenuous, there are structural problems to this a disaster management problem, and these have to do with the nature of the geographical situation of the country. You know, we are a hilly country, and people have been living on these hills for quite some time, and the resources necessary to shift them from those hills to urban planning, we already know the challenges that are facing, the country is facing in terms of housing and so on. So that is the kind of resources needed to move those people into those kind of settlements is very a serious structural problem. And as a responsible leader of a political party, he needs to deal with it much more seriously than the casual manner with which he's dealing with it. And I think it's dangerous and sends the wrong message. And point number two is once you remove the structural challenges, there are the immediate concerns when disaster has taken place. And this is when you see RDF, the Rwandan police, and all these stakeholders rushing in. And they're rushing in because there's the immediate humanitarian disaster that is taking place. And the nature of their mandates requires them to have this immediate response as opposed to the structural challenges that have to do. You've seen the roads breaking in half and so on. That is a structural challenge. And you may talk about the importance of planning in terms of envisaging the potential for these roads breaking apart and so on, and you consider that into the improving planning. That aspect is fine. But I think it's mixing many things, and it is creating it is disingenuous. I also add a little bit about Dr. Euster. There's something that I disagree with her, and I think it's also very important that I air it. The idea that because there is global warming taking place, that we should shift responsibilities, I disagree with. Now, there is global warming, it is taking place, but when you look at in other places, for instance, where you see Kenya, the Patel Bridge, the Patel Dam, the breakdown, there had been clear indications that this dam was built in such a way that it would cause disaster to the population living around there. So now, once the dam broke, they blamed it on environmental, on global warming. And I think once we begin to make excuses about disasters, to link them to global warming, we are going to miss an opportunity to prevent people from facing the kind of challenges they are facing.
I mean, Dr. Euster. That's a very serious allegation that you're actually trying to shift blame on global warming, and this would actually make it difficult for, will make it easy for those responsible to take responsibility when they have to. I mean, as citizens who are expecting their lives to be protected by their governments, by the people who are protecting them, and they're not, and we're shifting blame to global warming. What's your take on that?
Well, I should say that it wasn't shifting blame at all. It was taking cognizance of the realities that we are in. Now, that allows us to plan differently. I think that's what I was trying to say. We need to plan differently and be aware that maybe the things as usual are not going to be as usual as we are used to them. So in this regard, I'm not taking away the shift actually, but I'm trying to say that Rwanda and many other places are now required to be more prepared, but also there is a greater need to invest in the apparatus that is going to make us actually be able to detect certain calamities that we are not able to detect earlier.
Right.
I wanted also to mention a little bit on, I also don't want to assume, for example, the road in Gachenye. The road in Gachenye is a landslide matter. Now, when landslides happen, it's not about the road where it is. Actually, it is the hill where, or the hill or the mountain where the road is part of the neighborhood. So the presumption that it was a failure, I think, is the wrong presumption. The fact that landslides happen, we have a road that is totally blocked on the Ugandan side. And it's just, I think, like he was saying, it's just more the geographical character and the wetness that this so much rain is bringing on these mountains or hills. So some of that is very real, and we do not already have the capacity to measure how much rain has been retained by those hills. And therefore, by the time we don't even expect it, it doesn't actually happen because that day it was raining so much. It happens because there has been a lot of retention of the waters, and eventually the landslides happen. So I think we have to be conscious that the weather is no longer the same in many ways.
And plan accordingly.
And plan accordingly.
Right.
We have to plan for the droughts because they will come anyway.
Right.
We will have to plan for the too much rains because they have actually been a reality in our environment.
Dr. Lonzen is pointing an accusing finger at Dr. Abineza that he is actually running away from responsibility. What sort of responsibility can the government take from a governance point of view on what has been happening from these disasters?
Well, it's the responsibility of the government to create a secure environment for the people. That is the governance priority. In Rwanda, governance is people-centered. We lead for the people. That is the requirement. And therefore, the governance requirements are to be able to move people to a safer zone. And I think that is already in plan and in action in certain areas. I think he's recognized that it's not, you cannot just do it immediately, you do it progressively, but also you have to be prepared in cases of emergency. And I think what we are seeing now is circumstances of emergency. The ministry in charge is being very active, but beyond the ministry, we saw the Prime Minister going out to reach out for the people. We've seen the police during the police week engaging, and we've seen the army quite is to remember that we cannot afford to lose anyone in this process.
Right.
And in case there is a loss, government has taken responsibility as well. I think you remember when we had the thunderstorms, it was the government that took entire responsibility even in how those people were particularly buried.
Right. Let's move the conversation a bit forward and talk about what took place in this country a few weeks ago, the Mo Ibrahim Governance Weekend. Dr. Uste, you're part of it. I don't know if you were in town. Did you participate?
Yes, I was in town, but I was not invited.
You were not invited. If you had been invited, what sort of contribution?
First of all, people were asking, why did Mo Ibrahim choose Rwanda? That was the question.
Are you one of those people who was asking that?
And I was one of the people who were asked, actually. Yeah, I was asked by the German broadcaster, Deutsche Welle. Well, me, I thought perhaps it was because our president is now president of African Union. So that could have been one of the reasons why he chose Rwanda. I don't know other reasons why they chose Rwanda. But I think one of the problems, they were giving this prize to Ellen Johnson,
Yes.
the former Liberian president, as someone who gave power, got power democratically and left it democratically, which is a good encouragement to all African leaders. So I think that I appreciate Mo Ibrahim's contribution, encouraging African leaders to get power in democratic means and leave power also democratically, not to wait until people chase them away. So that one, I do support that.
So you're looking at it from the perspective of this is sort of encouraging them to leave power because they're going to get money.
No, it's not about money, but it's leaving a good legacy behind. Because, well, I think the money is not so big for the presidents, but it's also an encouragement that if you leave power peacefully, you get power democratically. That's the number one thing. You get it democratically. So this also helps, let's say, the younger leaders or the upcoming leaders to know that we should avoid getting power through illegal means. Or democratic means, because you know that at the end of the day, there will be no appreciation or you have no good legacy. So that's one part. We talk about those who are going, but also those who are incoming. So I think it's a good encouragement to us who want to get power that we should use democratic means because then we'll have a good legacy when I will be remembered.
Right.
And those who are there also to remember that it's better you go in a democratic way so that you can be remembered well, so that you don't wait people to push you away or to cling on power, and then you have problems for yourself and even for your people.
And your people and your legacy. Dr. Lonsen, did you follow? I'm sure you...
I was there.
You were there,
I was
indeed.
there.
I want to read your thoughts, first of all, as you add what you just want to say. Dr. Mo had to actually explain in some interviews, you know, because even in one of the conversations I had with him, he had to say that some people over years had thought that we are against some governments. He had to actually clarify that we are not, you know, against people staying longer in power, but we are against people abusing power. And people are asking themselves, what has changed? Because sometimes ago, people were saying that this leader who just bribes African leaders to leave office, this is what Mo Ibrahim had as far as his reputation was concerned around town. Did you also... did that also ring in your mind that what has changed that now Mo is part of all this?
Well, first of all, there's no need to speculate about that because Mo, when he was introducing the winner of the Mo Ibrahim Prize, he said why they came to Rwanda. Now, if you're going to speculate, then you are speculating against what the guy
said himself.
So you'd have other reasons to speculate. Mo said that he came to Rwanda because Salif Johnson requested that the prize should be given to her in an environment like Rwanda where women have been empowered and looking at the parliament and the social and economic and political context, the environment was conducive for women's empowerment and she wants to identify herself with that. That's the reason she chose Rwanda. Now, Dr. Habineza is conflating two matters, and I think I need to also point that out. He's conflating the idea that leaving the presidency equates to leaving behind a good legacy. These are two issues that are not the same. Because they are similar does not make it the same. Now, also, another thing that I think Dr. Habineza is not correct about is that this award is not given to someone who has left power. It's not a matter of leaving power. At least this is not what they say. This is not what the Mo Ibrahim. It is an achievement award, a leadership achievement award. This is the part about the legacy that I want to bring about. When you look at the state of governance in Liberia, one of the things that George Weah said immediately when he took power, he said that I was left a broke country. So it means that he has been bequeathed a broke country, and the legacy of a broke country is what he has inherited, which brings questions about the Mo Ibrahim Prize itself and the content of the prize. So there are questions around that. So is this is a prize around transformation of the lives of the African people, or is this some kind of cosmetic trophy to be passed around?
Right. I'm going to pass first of all to Dr. Usta, and then we'll come back to you. I mean, you were there. You were actively involved. We were actually supposed to have a show on that same night, but we were not able to do it. Your thoughts on what the two gentlemen have talked about, the significance of this. Would this be what would make African leaders or leaders wherever they are to actually deliver to their citizens, having in mind that there's some prize from Mo Ibrahim?
Well, I think if we see it from the perspective of accountable governance, whether we do it through the Mo Ibrahim indexes, I will be specific more than the award,
yes,
or whether we do it through our citizen report cards, the fact that there is a sense of accountability from the citizens to the leaders is a core element. I would like to mention that for me, really, the prize, if it's not tagged to improvement of the lives of the people, then really it doesn't bring a lot of sense. I'm not a proponent of saying that somebody will ambitiously want to leave power because they have a prize to come. I think people would want to leave power because they have delivered to the mission, or they believe that somebody is going to deliver better to the mission. And I think that is the preoccupation, actually. If you're a good African leader, the preoccupation is less of the prize, because you don't determine whether you will get the prize.
Or not, yes.
We've had circumstances where there was no prize winner for a particular year, and therefore, while Moi has his ambitions for the prize, I would not think an African leader should come to lead his people on the basis or on the anticipation of the pride. They should come to power to serve because of a particular mandate that they want to serve and improve the lives of the people. And when it's time that both the people and the leader deem it ready to leave and hand over to somebody else, that should happen irrespective. I think the biggest prize that you leave with your people is an improved life, a developed nation, and a peaceful nation, if you are able. But I know that it's a process for certain countries, and that process determines on who takes over and when whoever takes over
the reins of power. Dr. Habineza, this index, on governance did point out that there is actually growing expectations for public delivery. This is actually what is going on. Citizens across the world, actually in Africa specifically, are actually demanding for public service delivery. When you sit as the opposition, what are the areas probably that you can point out and say, you know what, these are the areas where public service is failing on in delivering to the people of Rwanda?
Well, maybe since Mo Ibrahim is more about Africa, perhaps we could start on the African level. I think most of the African people, they're lacking on
What
clean
if
water.
we talk about Rwanda?
Okay, clean water, or what they call potable water. How many people have clean water in Kigali? Very few. Even those who have the pipes that would deliver the water at their homes, how frequent does that water get to their homes? I know many people in Kigali, including on my home, sometimes we get water once or twice a week. So basically, there's a problem of delivering clean water to the people. Even the city will have a challenge. So now we're getting to June, July, when in the dry season, you'll find that even a jerrycan of water will cross 500 francs. And even getting water will be a challenge. So this happens every year. So get to the villages in the upcountry, Butare, wherever, in those places, Mutara. In Mutara, the eastern province, it's more terrible there because even livestock sometimes die, cows die because of lack of water. And again, I would say that there's a problem of proper planning, because we have these problems every year, which the government needs to put up mechanism to make sure that, especially in places like in Eastern Province, that because they know that it will happen, they should put some mechanism in, or some solutions in advance to avoid such problems. So move away from water. Electricity. how many people have electricity in the country? I don't have the figures. Maybe Dr. Lonzen has the figures, can tell us. But I am very sure that even in Kigali City, we have a challenge of electricity, even breaking down sometimes. But leave Kigali, go elsewhere. So there are
water,
other issues.
electricity.
Then there's healthcare, access to healthcare. In Rwanda, we're a little bit better in healthcare compared to other places. But then there's quality of that healthcare. People who have the Mutuelle de Santé, do they get good health service? Not really very well. But perhaps that's part of my manifesto. We're still working on that. Yeah. Go to schools. They talk now the word of iremediability. It's a quality education. It's a challenge in this country.
There's no quality education.
Well, I'm not saying there's no quality education. It's lacking.
It's lacking. Dr. Lonzen, that question when I asked Dr. Habineza, in your mind, did you expect this is typical of any opposition party leader or person to actually say the same things? Is this what was right?
No, I'm actually very disappointed in Dr. Habineza. It is a political party's gold mine. It is Christmas season. If he's able to tie what he's talking about, link it to politics, this is why he exists as the leader of the political party. If now the question becomes, why is it that it is unable, he is unable, or it is difficult to transform these challenges that he says Rwandans are facing, and he is partly right. But the question is, why is it that he is unable to make political capital out of these challenges? And the reason, he knows the reason, and that's why he's avoiding
What is the reason?
The reason is that people understand public service delivery in Rwanda. People understand that inbuilt in it is a strong mechanism for accountability. So now, when there's great mechanism for accountability, people understand the broader context within which services are delivered or not delivered. And that is why he's unable to produce politically out of these challenges. And that is why, basically what he's telling you is that even if he had the power, he would be unable to do anything about it. No. That is what he's expressing.
That's not correct, Dr. Lonzen. I think he's
just a right of reply. Just very briefly, then we go back to Dr. Yusta. Yes, I'm giving you a chance to actually rebuttal what
no, he's misleading the public. Because a political party functions, like the political party in power, the RPF and its coalition, we can give them ideas and they put those ideas into action. We have no capacity as a party now to put our ideas into action because we are not in government or not in parliament. But we can suggest ideas, or they can borrow some ideas from our manifesto and put into true practice. So basically, I can only point out that there is a problem of clean water, but I'm not the one to deliver that clean water. The government has institutions in place to deliver that clean water, but they are not doing it. Why? Maybe poor planning, or I think mostly it's about planning, poor planning. And again, sometimes they say they don't have resources. I think resources are there, but perhaps the poor misappropriation of the resources.
Poor misappropriation.
They can put them somewhere where it's not necessary.
These are very serious allegations he's making. I want to hear from you, as a person who works actually on governance matters here. These are very serious allegations. It's misappropriation, poor planning.
Why doesn't he turn them into votes? Why doesn't he turn the disaffection about these utilities into votes?
We are not in the campaigning period now. The campaigns are over.
Well, I want to start from where when the current president, when the current government program was presented to Parliament.
First of all, do you agree with the things he said?
I disagree, and that's where I'm going to come from. My disagreement is when the Prime Minister presented the mentioned clearly who is going to facilitate the implementation of this program. The government is just a partner of the implementation. The civil society, faith-based organizations, individual citizens, and everybody. And I think we should tie it even with a greater mandate that the world is in. Within the Sustainable Development Goals, we have committed that we are going to collectively move towards development. So while I realize that in public service, there's still a need to improve. Right. Last year the Prime Minister mentioned the capacities of the people who serve in public service. And over 30% lacked in their capacities. The consciousness and the capacity of knowing that there are those weaknesses preempts the need to actually create capacity. So I disagree because I work with a lot of civil society, and they do an amazing job in providing water to the people. There is a lot of partnership in development. There are many philanthropists that are partners in development in the agriculture sector and other sectors. So I think for me to make it just the political comfort that people do not do it, and you have somebody to say that it's their mistake for not doing it, we are speaking about our friends, our fathers, our mothers,
Relatives.
our sisters.
Yes. Even
And we cannot just make it too much of a political talk and the absence of the space to deliver water. Water does not have a political affiliation. It has no, it's not green, it's not red. Yes. It has a life-giving impact. And the capacity to deliver such goods, I think, this really Mo Ibrahim Governance Weekend spoke about the role of public services in improving the lives of individuals and the lives of the people that we serve. And I want to keep it at that. I think we all have a mandate to deliver to the people.
Listen, in Kenya, just next door, the opposition leader, Raila Odinga himself, shook hands with the president so that they can work together for the sake of the entire country. North Korea, South Korea, now they have a working relation despite all the disagreements they had. What is stopping you from going and saying, you know what, I want to work with you on these gaps? Would you do that?
Well, I think everything has its own circumstances. So I think at the moment we are not in the campaign mode. So basically now we are watching to see the ruling coalition, which one, what are they doing, or whether they are delivering on their promises, and then we can put them, to make them accountable on their promises. So basically, let me say, we of course will be in a
but
campaign
if I may interrupt, what do you call a ruling coalition?
Yes.
Because I know in the next few months people are going for parliamentary elections.
Actually, you're about to
and
talk
I think
about that.
really,
we know the ruling coalition, madam. We know that the parliament is still there. There was RPF with its coalition partners who went into elections. Their mandate is not yet over. They still have some time to go. So basically, they have a big block in parliament. And they have coalition partners also in the government, which is PSD and other parties. So basically, it's totally clear.
It's an elected parliament.
No, so basically, no, RPF went into elections with the other 6, 7 parties. So it's a coalition. It's not a lie. I'm not lying. They are facts. So now, back to my point, is that we are not refusing to work together
to solve those things,
to solve those problems. No, we are always ready to work together with Rwandans to solve the problems if we are called to do so.
But if we are not called to do so,
if they are not called to do so, we have our role to play, which we are always playing. So basically, right now, we are actually been revising our political program to suit it into the current environment, even of course of the upcoming parliamentary elections, to make sure that we can respond properly to the needs and the problems of Rwandans. We are almost done. We are 90% done with that process. So basically, in a few months, you hear us with better ideas, better ideas. How are we going to deal with these problems?
Right. Let me hear from Dr. Lonza.
The president is a busy person. If I was the president, I would not give him the audience to meet and shake hands.
Handshake.
Yeah, the reason I wouldn't is this. Raila was invited because Raila is able to link the disaffection faced by Kenyans, especially around corruption, to votes. Raila has a block of voters and they have demands. And without Kenyatta reaching out to Raila, the system in Kenya loses legitimacy. So until the time that Habineza is able to link what he perceives to be a disaffection around public utilities into votes, if he's unable to make the political link between the disaffection, the president would be wasting his time to give him an audience. It just can't happen.
It cannot happen.
Yeah, he's busy.
Do you think, as opposition, he's doing what he says is what they're doing? I mean, if they're not invited, they'll do their job of actually...
And Dr. Eustace pointed the issue. He needs to come out of the manifesto and come on the ground and link the disaffections that actually I'm even going to concede some of the things that he said. And when he talks about the challenges in public utilities, water, electricity, and so on, these are legitimate challenges, legitimate issues, and people are facing these difficulties. Now, I am giving him advice because I like him. I'm giving him advice. He is there to link this disaffection to votes. Until he's able to do that, he will continue to be accused of living in a manifesto. So basically, she's telling him that he's in a paper. You know, he's a paper. You know, I can't add what else. If I was writing, I would have added. But the point is that he will continue to be accused of living in the manifesto. He needs to come out of the manifesto, identify disaffection, and during the election, he identified something that I think had political legs, but he was unable to push it, and that is the biggest challenge I have with Habineza and the Green Party. He's unable to link what he perceives to be disaffection, either because he doesn't believe they are disaffection, or if he does believe they are, why he is unable to link them to votes.
Right. And at the end of the day, Dr. Uster, even as Dr. Lonzen suggests that he links that to votes, if we indeed have people who are going through what Dr. Habineza is saying, they have a right to actually get what is rightfully theirs: access to clean water, access to electricity, good roads, education. So what sort of ownership to whatever he says? Is there any part where the government concedes and says, you know what, it's actually true, and this is actually, we are ready to actually work with you? Would you approach him and say, since you seem to know best some of those areas that you're saying, would you be able to do this? Is this something that can be done?
Well, I think actually he's already part of the whole framework. You know, the Constitution of the Republic of Rwanda believes in a very important principle: pluralistic, consensual, and dialogue in terms of governing this country. I am sure you are a member of the Forum for Political Parties, and that's a forum that really engages on political matters of the country. So I think I am trying to find out, and this is how I have believed in the governance structure of this country. You do not wait until the next time of going to the ballots to make an impact. At least the dialogue, the consensus building, but also being able to act. You know, it's Rwandans are now judging people for their actions. Whoever comes to power, that's very important. It's going to be very hard to wait to come to power and start acting. And people are partners. You know, the development journey is a people-centered thing, and that is not a political party-centered thing. So for me, I think really that the point that I wanted to ask, beyond what you see, what prevents you from doing? Has the government ever found you building a borehole and said, no, you are the Green Party, you can't do that? I would be happy to know that, because when the government says this is what we want to deliver, even in my institution now, when I say I'm going to deliver on this in this particular year, we are in a planning period. I say what the government is going to be able to provide, but I say what other people are going to be able to provide. And therefore, he has that space of being able to provide on some things that he passionately believes in, without necessarily being in the life of his man. He can live his manifesto not in a particular office, because the manifesto is the deliverables that you want to give people. You would give it to them broadly if you took the government, but you could deliver each of those things to the extent that you can afford to deliver on.
I think that was a very direct and straightforward question. I mean, you seem to be part of the people who are actually able to solve the problems you talk about, but you deliberately decide to say, oh yeah, you know what, this one is not mine to do. And she asked very clearly, is there anything you went out and said, we are trying to solve this in this area, and somebody told you, stop, because you are the Green Party?
No, I think perhaps the problem is people to identify or to understand the role of political parties. Political parties are not civil society organizations or faith-based organizations. Political parties form government, and the government puts things into action. Government has institutions like, let's say, REMA and others, WASA and so on, but or ministries, but those institutions under ministries are the ones which implement policies. So the role of a political party is to make policy. It's not to go to plant trees or to make boreholes. Those are the laws of civil society organizations or the government implementing agencies.
Even the Democratic Green Party cannot plant trees.
If we want, we can. No one refuses us to plant trees, but it's not the law of a political party. We can do it if we want to do so for one reason or another, but it's not in the main or even objectives of our political parties, not to go to plant trees or to, but we can make policies that can lead to tree planting.
Only when you're in power, that's the only time you can make the policies.
Now we propose policies, but we don't have the mandate to put our policies into action, because those people who have mandate are those the parliament or those who can make those ideas and put it into laws or proposals into policy actions which can be implemented. So we can just, I suggest, write some press releases, but we don't have the capacity or the money to put them into action. So basically, that's what people need to understand first. That a political party is not an NGO or a company or a government institution which will not put things into action. But at the moment, maybe I would just like to suggest or to advise the government why we have these problems of climate change, those landsliding, those flooding, and so on. It's partly because of we have cut down most of our trees, and those trees which have been planted also have not been monitored. So we still have bare hills. So government needs to encourage all the stakeholders to plant more trees.
And you cannot do that.
We can.
But you say government should advise.
Because I say political parties form government.
Right.
So the political parties make policies, and then government puts those things into action. People vote a party, and the party forms government. And then the government has institutions and other stakeholders who can put those ideas into action. So this is what you need to understand. So when I see my fellow here, Dr. Lozen, suggesting that we should go there and plant or make boreholes, that's not
I'm not suggesting that. Actually, the problem is that you are behaving as if you should be digging boreholes. And the problem is that a political party identifies a problem.
Yes.
And it goes to the people and says, you know, you have this problem because of these people in power. Help me, vote for me, remove them in power, I'll fix this problem. And this is where I'm telling you, you need to link the problems you are seeing in this society into votes.
I agree totally with you on that.
Yes, and that is how you get the mandate you need to change these things.
Yes.
Unless you stop believing that you need to do things once you are in power, you will never get the power needed to make the changes that you think you should change.
Don't worry, we are getting to the parliamentary campaigns.
Yes, and actually
you will see how we link them. Well, we've actually been linked them for a long time.
Yes.
And but we are not in the campaigning period now. Now we're just giving chance to the government to see what they are. But we'll be in the campaign season soon.
Right. And talking of parliamentary elections, actually, they're coming soon. And I'm sure that there was a time when there was an insinuation that we actually need to reduce the threshold from, is it 5%?
Yeah,
5% to 2%.
He wants 2%.
So you want 2%?
Even one would be fine.
Would they make it? Prediction. Do you think even if they reduce it to 2 or 1, will they make it?
0.5. They may make it.
0.5, that's when they'll make it?
Yeah.
No, well,
okay.
We are not scared of the 5% threshold, but we are saying that especially if you want independent candidates to be in parliament, you cannot treat independent candidates as on the equal threshold as political parties. That's why we say that independent candidates should be given 2%. But even for political parties, we know, like I would give you an example of Sweden, it's 4% for parties to go to parliament. It's not 5%. So why Rwanda should be 5%? We can reduce even from 5%.
What's your thought, Dr. Eustace? I read these tweets very quickly. What's your thought on that?
Well, I think that that's what the law says. We have chosen 5%
But the law can be changed.
until you have very good reasons for not having the 5%. I think that's actually one of the things you're saying. That's how you inform policy.
Right.
It's the rule of the majority. And being able to get the majority and serving with that kind of legitimacy is very important. So I think 5% is basically, you know, it's not a mark that matters in many other places, but in this particular place, 5% is huge. And it's huge, but very small as well. So for me, I do not have a problem with 5% at all. I think the Greens will, for me, it's really very small.
Even small.
You have to have better
Nanango, let me tell you why it needs to be made higher.
Yes.
Now, if you reduce to 2%, you're going to have hundreds of briefcase political parties wanting to go in parliament. In fact, I may form my own political party if that happens, because the chances of going to parliament, everybody will think that they can run to parliament.
Because the threshold is reduced, right.
So you need to, in Rwanda, we do not lower the bar. We raise the bar.
Okay, that one is a good parting shot on that one. Let's read this tweet very quickly.
Inclusiveness as well. As you raise the bar.
So they have to reduce so that they include everybody?
No, we are saying that for independent candidates...
Let's have this conversation when we have a debate on the parliamentary elections. That one is coming soon and it will be very important. Let's read this tweet right up from a good friend, Jenny, the Swedish ambassador in Rwanda. And she says, good debate, but for an outsider, quite an unexpected focus on the role of the opposition. Isn't it always the role of an opposition to point at issues they perceive as weakness and challenges? Hopefully suggest some alternative solutions, but it's not mandatory to do so. This is what he says. I think, Dr. Lorenzen, you seem to be pushing Habineza and Euster to actually offer the alternative, but he seems to have already done his part of pointing out those areas.
It's not enough. As a political party, it needs to do more.
He needs to do more. It's not enough. Right, let's have a look at this one over here from Jean Bosco. You've raised an important debate, but finally we need to move from plans to actions. A lot has been done, so we have to go on. If, for example, any disaster that happened this year comes back next year, how shall we call it? Dr. Euster, what do you have to tell this person?
I think even the fact that we are trying to confront with the current disaster,
yes.
I hope there are not going to be many people still living in the disaster areas that people have been found in, because already some have been vacated, and I don't see them going back. So if we are not more prepared as a government, I think that would be a big time problem. But there have been lessons down the road, and there have been approaches actually to mitigate the disasters.
Right. Dr. Habineza, next year, God forbid, we come back, there was another disaster, would you still be telling us the same thing? The government needs to plan and go on action. So what sort of deliberate steps would you be making to be part of this proper planning?
No, like, let's say, yes, we talk about next year. Let's say if we win elections and be in parliament, we are very sure that 5% actually, as you said, it's very low. We have capacity to get more than 5%.
Very good, very good. Yeah.
So we're hoping that we will be at that time in parliament. We will suggest good policies and make sure that all what has been planned is put into action. So we actually, as parliament, we advise government, but also make government accountable that you have planned this, put it into action. You call out the minister and suggest where is the action for this, so that we don't face the same problem.
So you're trying to say the current parliament is not doing that?
No, I'm not saying. You have asked me what I could be doing next year. So I'm trying to tell you. I'm not saying I've not done that. I'm saying what I can be doing, I will do next year.
But as you're saying it, you're saying so if you're elected, this is what
if we are elected, and we are in parliament, and we will be able to monitor the progress on the government actions and make sure that these actions or plans, whatever has been planned is put into action. The people living in those hillsides, they are settled in proper homes, and they are no longer living in disaster areas. Then also the roads which are being built without trenches, we should make sure that we be fixed.
Let me tell you
and the people in the northern province who always have the danger of suffering from those big waters coming, we make sure that we, because the people, some of those people are still living, like in Basse, in Ruhengeri, they are living near the watershed.
Let's hear from Dr. Lonza.
Let me tell you the biggest challenge that he faces and other political parties that are challenging the RPF. Until the RPF becomes unaccountable, they are going to have very serious difficulties linking the challenges that the RPF faces in its governance to change. Until the RPF becomes unaccountable, it's going to be very difficult for those who seek to replace it to link the challenges that it is facing in governance to replace it, to
Right.
replace the RPF.
So it's going to be difficult
Very,
to do that.
very difficult.
Yes.
I wanted to come back about the fact that as opposition he's doing his job. I wanted really to go back to our constitutional settings. Political parties in Rwanda are not constructed on whether they are in opposition or not. They are constructed on what they have to offer to the people of a particular nation. So I think really the discussion on by pointing out what the government is not doing as a standard of of the actions of a political party is not what is constitutionally expected. What is constitutionally expected is that when I seek registration as a political party, I have an ideology and an agenda that I have to offer to the people, not necessarily on the basis of what the
That's
other
not
is
in the
giving.
Constitution. I think, Honorable Usta, what you are saying is not in the Constitution at all. The Constitution is very clear. It gives freedom of speech, freedom of expression, and the Constitution of Rwanda gives pluralism, political pluralism to all political parties. There is no law. What I agree with that, there is no law saying that this is an opposition party or a government party. All political parties have freedom to have different ideas, different plan of actions. They may be, when they accept political pluralism,
Right.
it means that their ideas are different.
Right.
Parties cannot have the same ideas. If they have the same ideas, then there's no need of more than one party. So
I don't-
as long as we have different ideas, it means those ideas can conflict, but we agree on one principle in the Constitution, consensus building. So we agree that we will not be confronting each other. We can reach a place of having a consensus.
Right,
But what she said is not in the Constitution.
What I said about the Constitution is that your political party is not constructed on the basis of opposing the other. Your political party, it depends on what you want to deliver, which is your pluralistic ideas, which you might do, actually, the constitutional process is you do it consensually and through dialogue. That's a constitutional standard under Article 10 of the Constitution. So what I wanted to mention is, somebody may not choose to sit in this country because they are opposition and they are pointing out what the government is not doing,
Yes.
and do not afford to make a difference in the lives of the people of Rwanda, because the people of Rwanda are used to, whether you're doing it politically or not, to make a difference in their lives. And
Perfect.
that is the point I was trying to
All right,
bring across.
and I'm told we're actually running out of time. We have only 1 minute to go. We want to use it very well, Dr. Lonze, and actually we understand we have a surprise for you because we actually close.
Now, the reason we need to raise the bar
Yes.
and ensure that political parties like Dr. Habinezer's don't get a chance to come in the parliament
Yes.
is because we think that the RPF is not being challenged enough.
Yeah.
So we need... The RPF actually may be underperforming and we don't know it.
Yes.
So we need
We need
parties
someone to
that are serious.
over-challenge
Yes.
the RPF.
Yeah.
And talking
We
of
need
that, it
political
was actually
parties.
your birthday
Yes.
party just the other day.
The thing was, it was on Twitter. This is TV. Stay in your lane.
Yes,
Stay in your
I'm
lane.
staying in my
Yeah.
lane, but of
So-
course we just want to say we appreciate you.
Yes.
We have only 1 second to go off
I
air.
appreciate
So karibu
I
sana,
appreciate
just have a munch
So
here.
they need to challenge.
They
the
need to
RPF.
challenge, but you said you want to
They-
vie for
They need
parliamentary.
to challenge the RPF.
You said you'll run for
Thank you very much.
parliamentary. You'll run under the
This is
Green
my
Party.
friend.
Yes, yes.
There you go.
Patie
Yeah.
Atukikula.
Asante.
Yes,
Asante.
yes.
So if they make a mistake, if they make a mistake of reducing the bar,
Yes.
of lowering the bar,
Yes.
we are all going to create political parties. There are going to be all kind of chaos,
Yes.
like those countries
But
where
then why do
they
we
are-
put up
the
a law to allow independent candidates when we cannot make
briefcase
it
political
possible for them to go
parties,
to parliament?
and the RPF is going
Right.
to continue to not be challenged and not to live to its potential. We want political parties that are serious, that are
And are
able to
living to the-
challenge the RPF to make it live to its political potential.
Does the Green Party?
No, it does not.
It does not. All right. So this conversation will actually go on, of course, as we munch the cake in celebration of Dr. Lonze Rugira, who actually celebrated his birthday. How old are you, Johnny?
Birthday.
A man of a certain age.
A man of a certain age. Thank you so much for watching. The conversation goes on, of course. Hashtag InFocusRW. These conversations are very necessary. Let's keep talking
But I
for
didn't
the
agree
sake
with
of
him.
action. You do not agree?
agree with him.
No, we'll actually continue this conversation.
I wish it had
Next
been
week,
consensus.
same time,
We have the
same place.
consensus.
There's no
Good
consensus
night,
on
as
that.
always, is Eugene.
I gave you my cake. Have some cake.
Good
Have
night.
some cake.
Let's have some.
Consensus on that.
Thank you.
No consensus.
The cake is nice.
Karibu sana. Karibu sana. Tukule bana.
Rondair, renowned for its tremendous ability to fulfill your dreams, invites you to connect more with your friends and family in